soul piercing through the snow. Killing enemies and becoming stronger introduction. The spring and autumn war is in full swing, and Emperor Liyang has appointed Xu Xiao as the Grand General. Xu Xiao also lived up to expectations and personally led the army to successively attack and annihilate the Later Sui, Later Song, and Northern Han kingdoms. Coincidentally, during the downfall of the Northern Han Dynasty, a soul from later generations passed through the world of fierce swordsmanship in the snow due to an accident and became possessed by the crown prince of the downfall of the Northern Han Dynasty. Lu Xun was stunned and lost in thought. There was a blockade in front and a pursuer at the back, and the road ahead was uncertain. Where should he go? At the moment when I was at a loss, I suddenly awakened the God of Killing system, which only requires killing enemies to become stronger. What else are you thinking? Kill it. Chapter 1. Rainy Night. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Rainy night. Rainstorm poured in, the sky flashed and thundered, and lightning broke through the darkness, setting off dozens of figures. More than 10 guards with swords gathered around a middle-aged boy and ran frantically along the mountain path. The young man always wore an indescribable panic on his face. The shouting of killing gradually drifted away, but he knew that the danger was far from over. Liang Xiaogo's pursuit continued, and they were like ghosts, always following behind and biting him tightly. Suddenly, a gust of cold wind blew, with a hint of coldness, piercing the bleeding wound of the young man. He turned his head and suddenly saw several figures. Under the flickering thunder and lightning, he could tell that the person was Zhao Guo's scout who had been ordered to pursue him. They followed closely behind, their steps firm, and their eyes fierce like wolves. Lu Xun's heart tightened and he quickly quickened his pace, escaping into the dense forest by the roadside. The rain wetted his clothes, but he paid no attention to it. Now, only survival is the only goal at present. A group of people walked through the dense forest and found a dilapidated farmhouse. The young man was seriously injured, and they were worried that continuing the journey might worsen the boy's condition. After some simple discussions, they decided to take a temporary rest here. Several guards quietly entered and conducted a preliminary investigation. They found no one around the farmhouse, which was relatively safe. They then called for the young man to come in for shelter and carefully closed the door. Before everyone could catch their breath, in the darkness, the boy could clearly hear the footsteps getting closer and closer, as if a call of misfortune. His heart was pounding uncontrollably, and he held his breath, praying that he could escape this calamity. However, when he felt a piercing pain coming from his abdomen, he realized that his injury had reached a point where it was difficult to recover. He quickly covered the wound with his hand, but still could clearly feel blood dripping between his fingers, making his mind even more drowsy. The rain kept hitting the roof, and the thunderous sound seemed to echo his heartbeat. That night, the young man was destined to engage in a battle of wits and courage with those who were chasing him. He hoped to survive this deadly rainy night, even though his injuries had become increasingly severe. Your Highness, hold on, hold on. Don't sleep, never sleep. The boy felt his head getting heavier and heavier, and his eyelids unconsciously began to fight. In the end, he slowly closed his eyes amidst the calls of everyone. Your Highness. Your Highness. Your Highness. It took about 10 or so breaths. Lu Xun suddenly opened his eyes, panting heavily in fear. At the same time, he didn't forget to look around and silently scrutinize the surroundings. Seeing the group of guards with swords silently surrounding him in the middle, he blinked in confusion. Who am I? Where am I? What is the current situation? While contemplating, suddenly, a piercing pain came from his abdomen, causing him to crack his mouth. Just as he was about to let out his painful breath, he suddenly felt a headache and a very painful memory flooded into his mind. At this moment, he also ignored the sharp pain coming from his upper abdomen, because compared to physical pain, mental torture is the most deadly. He clasped his head in both hands, with a painful expression on his face, clearly receiving some memory that did not belong to him. After a long time, he slowly opened his eyes and an incredulous expression flashed across his face. Time traveled. Due to an accident, Lu Xun traveled to the world of fierce swordsmanship in the snow, and his soul pierced through the crown prince of the Northern Han Dynasty. Unfortunately, he actually crossed over and became the crown prince of the Northern Han Dynasty. The spring and autumn war is in full swing. Emperor Liyang ordered Xu Xiao to take command. Xu Xiao personally led his army to engage in fierce battles with the Northern Han army under the city of Taiyuan. After several months of fierce fighting, the Northern Han finally failed to block the military peak in Liyang. When the city was breached, the Emperor of Northern Han ordered the imperial guards to take the crown prince Lu Xun and flee north, reclining trough. This is a hell of a situation. Lu Xun was restless, his eyes flickering with fear. Coincidentally at this moment, just as he was still immersed in this sudden change, a very ethereal voice suddenly came to his ear. Congratulations to the host, successfully binding the killing god system. Wishing you a smooth journey in the snowy world. Lu Xun was startled by the sudden sound, but he quickly calmed down and silently checked the system panel. Four big characters appeared prominently above the system panel. God-killing system, What is the situation? Lu Xun's thoughts were captured in the system's ears without a word falling. The system patiently explained, your identity is the crown prince of the Northern Han Dynasty, and you are currently facing the pursuit of Zhao Go from Liyang. Therefore, your current situation is very dangerous. If you choose to bow down and submit, there will be only one way to die. What can I do to break the game? What functions do you have? Can you help me break the game? The God-killing system, as the name suggests, means to become stronger by killing enemies. Killing anyone except ordinary people can earn a God-killing point, which can be used to participate in a system lottery. Lu Xianxia pressed down his excitement and asked, can you explain it in more detail? The person you personally kill, as well as the person under your command who kills, will bring you a system reward for the God of Killing point. Kill an ordinary soldier to obtain 1 God of Killing point. Kill the 3rd rank warrior to obtain 1000 God Killing points. Kill the 2nd level junior master to obtain 3000 Killing God points. Kill a warrior from the Diamond Realm to obtain 10,000 God of Death points. Killing a martial artist in the Xianjing realm earns 15,000 points of Divine Killing points. Kill a Celestial Realm warrior to obtain 20,000 kill points. Kill a Land Immortal Realm warrior to obtain 30,000 kill points. Kill a Land Heavenly and Human Realm expert to obtain 50,000 kill points. Each lottery consumes 10,000 points of Killing God points. What rewards can be drawn? Lu Xun asked. Characters, techniques, elixirs, divine weapons, gold and silver. Upon hearing these words, Lu Xun suddenly breathed a sigh of relief and his heart relaxed slightly. At this moment, the sound of the system came back to my ears. Ding dong. Congratulations to the host. You have bound the God-killing system for the first time and received a beginner's gift package. Do you want to claim it? Claim. Without any hesitation, Lu Xun lightly tapped the Claim button on the system panel with his mind. At the same time, he silently lifted his head and looked at the group of guards surrounding him, saying, after driving for several days in a row, I believe everyone is already very tired. You go out first, I want to stay alone for a while. The chief guard, named Yan Yuner, bowed to Lu Xun upon hearing this and was about to offer a few words of advice, but was interrupted by his wave. Wait outside the house, you must not enter without permission. Seeing the guards looking at each other but still having no intention of leaving, Lu Xun had no choice but to make up an excuse and said, I want to sleep for a while, I don't want to be disturbed. You should go rest for a while too. Speaking, he waved his hand to the crowd. Everyone nodded silently upon seeing the situation and bowed before retreating. As everyone approached the door, Lu Xun suddenly said solemnly to Yan Yuner, "Keep an eye on the door for me." Yan Yuner frowned and looked at Lu Xun with a puzzled expression. Seeing his serious expression, she silently nodded. At this moment, there was only Lu Xun left in the farmhouse, and he quickly opened the system panel with his mind. At this moment, a roulette suddenly appeared in his mind, with a total of 5 options on the roulette. Character, martial arts, elixir, divine weapon, gold and silver. The next moment, the system interface flickered slightly, and the wheel slowly turned. Cultivation techniques. Lu Xun kept silently reciting the word cultivation method in his heart. The top priority is to first enhance one's own strength. Now that strong enemies are around, one needs to have a certain degree of self-protection. The system seemed to hear Lu Xun's call, and after circling the roulette wheel for more than 10 times, the pointer slowly stopped at the option in the cultivation column. A martial arts secret book appeared in the system interface. After seeing the martial arts in the secret script, Lu Xun was so shocked that he took a deep breath. He suppressed his excitement and said to himself, "Oh my goodness, it's actually the Dragon Elephant Prajnaparamita technique. Great perfection." Taking a long breath and calming his mind, he lightly tapped on the secret script with his mind. The next moment, but with a flicker of light, the secret script suddenly turned into fragments of light, all of which flooded into Lu Xun's mind. Lu Xun quickly sat cross-legged on the couch, careful not to let his mind sink into his body. Suddenly, he felt a faint feeling of dryness and heat in the dantian area. This should be the power of the Dragon Elephant Prajnaparamita technique, right? With a thought, I began to operate the Dragon Elephant Prajnaparamita technique. At the next moment, with a loud bang, Lu Xun suddenly felt as if the dantian had exploded. The overwhelming heat flowed from the 4 acupoints of Guan Yuan, Qi Hai, Shermen, and Yin Jiao around the dantian, rushing into all 4 limbs and bones along various meridians. Under the impact of this surging current, his internal organs were trembling violently, emitting explosive sounds like thunderbolts. With the operation of the Dragon Elephant Prajnaparamita technique for a whole week, the torrent of true energy rushing through the 4 limbs and bones converges once again in the dantian like a sea of rivers. As if it had formed its own heaven and earth, it contained an endless stream of true energy. The 3 flowers gather at the top, the 5 qi move towards the yuan, and the qi rushes towards the bull. At this moment, Lu Xun seemed to be immersed in a mist, with the true air swirling around the farmhouse. With every breath, several streams of true air would gush out from his 7 orifices. The windows and doors were shaken by these rushing streams of true air, as if rain was about to come. The sky is full of strange phenomena. The roof is shrouded in red clouds. A group of guards gathered around the farmhouse upon seeing the situation, but were stopped by Yan Yuner. Yan Yuner scanned the crowd with a stern gaze and said coldly, "Your Highness has instructed that you must not approach without permission. Anyone who violates this rule will be shot to death." Upon hearing this, everyone sneered and silently retreated to the side, afraid to touch his moldy head. About half an hour has passed. Lu Xun slowly opened his eyes and exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. At this moment, the sound of waves suddenly sounded, and more than 10 senior guards simultaneously drew their swords and unsheathed their sheaths, turning their heads to look towards the direction of the farmhouse. At first glance, everyone only saw Lu Xun's slightly immature and harmless face. Lu Xun smiled slightly and said, "There is only one person in the house, you don't need to be nervous." Upon hearing this, Yan Yuner couldn't help but frown and slowly release her grip on the handle of the knife. She said to herself, "I just felt a hint of danger. How could I suddenly disappear in the blink of an eye? This is really strange." He had just relaxed his guard, but saw Lu Xun's gaze shoot towards him like lightning. However, before he could ask, Lu Xun slowly picked up his hands, covered his mouth, let out a sigh, and asked in a deep voice, "Do you think murder is difficult?" Yan Yuner silently gazed at Lu Xun's slightly immature face, wondering why he suddenly asked himself this question without thinking. He frowned and replied truthfully, "Your Highness, this is different from the past. You are now the only child of our Han Dynasty. If you encounter danger, you must not be lenient. You must find ways to survive and have hope for national rejuvenation." "Okay." Lu Xun forced out a smile and looked behind the guards, squinting his eyes slightly and saying, "They're here." Upon hearing these words, Yan Yuner immediately became more vigilant and said, "Escort, hurry up, escort." Upon hearing this, everyone quickly placed Lu Xuanhu in the middle. Yan Yuner's voice lags behind. Suddenly, more than 10 black shadows flashed outside the farmhouse. The leader is an old man at the foot of a slope. Lu Xun tried to remain calm on his face, but his hands held in front of him couldn't stop trembling slightly. He smiled and looked at the crippled old man, sarcastically saying, "Is Liyang useless anymore? Why did you even send out a lame old man?" As he spoke, he tilted his head and looked behind the crippled old man with a cold smile, saying, "Why are each one injured? You, the court of Liyang, may not understand how to empathize with your subordinates." The old man smiled faintly and said in a hoarse voice, "After years of fighting, we inevitably suffered injuries. Fortunately, we have gained a lot. However, compared to the impending collapse of the country and family in the Northern Han Dynasty, the injuries we have suffered are nothing." Lu Xun looked coldly at the old man in front of him, pursed his lips and said, "The country is broken, the mountains and rivers are here, and there will be descendants in the rivers and mountains. As long as I am still alive, the great Han has not died." The old man was taken aback and then burst into laughter, laughing wildly and wildly. After laughing, the old man reached out to wipe the tears from the corners of his eyes and looked at Lu Xun, saying, "Little doll, how old are you? What a big breath. You're not afraid of your tongue flickering in the wind? Hee hee." Lu Xun smiled slightly and slowly stood up, saying, "It's not too late to discuss the issue of age later. Take my move first." As he spoke, he suddenly took a step forward and his body was like an arrow departing from a string, rushing out with a swoosh. There was a sudden change in the farmhouse, and more than a dozen guards wanted to stop it, but it was already too late. Lu Xun dodged 3 or 4 steps in front of the old man and suddenly punched him straight into the palace. Faced with the young Lu Xun, the old man couldn't help but feel a bit careless about the enemy. In addition, the war against the Northern Han Dynasty progressed exceptionally smoothly, making the old man appear somewhat complacent. As Lu Xun swung a punch, the old man still appeared to lift his right hand calmly and casually. He thought he could easily shake off the power of the punch. However, in the end, he miscalculated. It was only when the fist wind was carrying an unparalleled and domineering true energy that he finally felt a mountain-like pressure from this seemingly ordinary punch. With a fierce and unmatched fist, he landed on the old man and immediately twisted his limbs and bones into pieces. In just an instant, the limping old man who had just stood in front of everyone, still intact, and showing off his authority, was instantly beaten into a bloody person. His body was also like a broken kite, shot back 7 or 8 zhang away, and then fell to the ground with a loud bang. Hush! My goodness! Is this still the His Highness I know? The dozen or so senior guards present were all stunned by the scene just now. At this moment, a system prompt sound suddenly came from Lu Xun's ear. Ding dong! Congratulations to the host. Kill a Diamond Realm expert and reward 10,000 killing god points. You can participate in a random lottery. Upon seeing this, Lu Xun quickly opened the system interface with his mind and lightly clicked on the word lottery in the middle of the roulette wheel. The next moment, the wheel slowly turned. After circling the roulette wheel for more than a dozen times, the pointer slowly stopped at the option of character. Congratulations to the host, have you obtained a character card? Do you want to unlock the character card? Unlock. Ding dong, congratulations to the host. You have obtained the character card. Yenyun 18 Cavalries. Lying Trough. Lu Xun quickly looked up at the dozen or so imperial guards and silently counted them. There were exactly 18 of them. Looking at their attire, they were both surprised and delighted. But they were dressed in cold clothes, with curved swords on their waists, masks on their faces, black scarves on their heads, only their eyes visible, and black long cloaks on their outer bodies. They were wearing riding boots, with a dagger inserted inside them. They all carried carved bows, each carrying 18 arrows, and were all equipped with uniform round moon curved swords. Their strength is between the second-level Master Realm and the first-level Finger Xian Realm, among which Yen Yuner is the strongest and should be at the peak of the Diamond Realm, only half a step away from the Finger Xian Realm. The entire process from the system lottery to counting the number of Yen Yun's 18 riders lasted for less than 5 breaths. The detectives Zhao Go, who came with the lame old man to pursue Lu Xun, had just come to their senses from shock. Upon seeing the situation, Lu Xun quickly instructed Yen Yuner, hurry up and don't leave any survivors, so that they don't go back and report any news. No. Yen Yuner responded and immediately waved his hand. 18 people simultaneously attacked Zhao Go, who had lost his backbone. These dozen or so Zhao Go detectives were not as bad as they had imagined. Although they lost their backbone, they still quickly reacted. Several young scouts with outstanding physique turned around and ran, while the other 7 or 8 voluntarily stayed behind to cut off their rear. But ideals are full, reality is bone deep. Faced with the rapid attack of the 18 cavalries of Yen Yun, Zhao Go, who had taken the initiative to leave behind, had almost no fighting power. With only one face, he was executed on the spot. The entire process lasted less than a minute. Seeing several Zhao Go scouts running away and about to break free from control, Lu Xun's eyes turned cold and he decided to personally take them on a journey. At this moment, Yen Yuner bowed to Lu Xun and immediately took off the carved bow and arrows from behind. He then arched the bow and arrows, held his breath, and shot 4 arrows in a row. The above actions were completed in one go. The arrow flew in the air for 3 or 4 breaths, while the figures of the few fugitive detectives Zhao Go had gradually disappeared from everyone's sight. Lu Xun's eyes suddenly flashed with an indescribable look of anxiety. If they run away while pondering, I suddenly heard 4 extremely mournful screams coming from a distance. Hush! Upon hearing this, Lu Xun couldn't help but take a cold breath and looked at the mountain path, silently calculating in his heart. I'm afraid it's already over 300 steps, isn't it? Old 6, old 7, go and bring back their bodies. No. 2 figures flashed out of the crowd, bowed to Lu Xun, and quickly flew away in the direction of the screams. After a long time, the 2 of them went back and forth, holding 2 heads in their hands. Lu Xun silently glanced at the head held in his hand by the 2 of them and was secretly surprised. What a Yenyun 18 cavalry. His work is indeed neat and neat, it really broadens one's horizons. Just as Yen Yun's 18 cavalry joined forces to kill Zhao Go's scout, Lu Xun's mind kept ringing with system prompts. Ding dong. Congratulations to the host, slay a second-level martial artist and obtain 3,000 points of killing god. Congratulations to the host, slay 4 third-grade martial artists and obtain 4,000 points of killing god points. Congratulations to the host. Kill several 4th and 5th level martial artists and obtain a total of 3,000 killing points. When the killing points accumulate to 10,000, the system prompt sound will sound again. Ding dong. Congratulations to the host, you have received a random lottery opportunity. May I ask if you want to draw a prize? Lu Xun breathed a sigh of relief as his mind entered the system space and opened the lottery interface with his mind. Just as he was about to draw, he suddenly heard a rustling sound coming from deep in the forest. Escort. Yen Yuner also sensed the sound deep in the forest and immediately stood up to protect Lu Xun. She looked for the Shuyuan website www.zhaoshuyuan.com and pointed to the direction of the sound, saying, "Third and fourth, go and take a look." No. Two extremely burly figures emerged from the crowd, and they bowed to Lu Xun before flying away in the direction of the sound. About 4 or 5 breaths have passed. A few crisp ping-pong sounds suddenly came from deep in the dense forest. As soon as everyone heard it, they knew that it was the sound made when weapons clashed. Yan Yuner frowned and turned her head to look at the crowd, giving a glance to 2 skinny men. Old 5, old 6. 2 more figures emerged from the crowd, each bowing to Lu Xun before rushing towards the direction of the sound. More than 10 more breaths have passed. The 4 inner guards retreated from the dense forest with a guarded expression. Looking at the 4 robes with their bows and swords on their backs, Yan Yuner frowned with a gloomy expression, squinted her eyes, pondered for a moment, and then silently looked at Lu Xun with furrowed brows, saying, "Please be relieved, Your Highness. It should be our own people who have come." "Oh." Lu Xun frowned and said, "How could you see that?" Yan Yuner reached out and pointed to the 4 robes facing her back, saying, "When Yan Yun's 18 cavalry took action, there were only 2 outcomes. Either the enemy died or I died. Your Highness, please see that the 3rd person had no heads in their hands, while the newcomer was still alive. This is enough to show that the opponent is a friend rather than an enemy." Lu Xun was so surprised by the behavior of Yan Yun's 18 cavalries that he couldn't help but take a cold breath. He smiled and nodded, saying, "I see." Speaking silently, he lightly clicked on the lottery button on the system interface. Just at this moment, a tall man dressed in white slowly walked out of the dense forest. Chapter 2. Sword Saint. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Lu Xun silently scrutinized the newcomer and saw him holding a wooden sword, with bloodstains on his white clothes and black hair parted in the middle. In his memory, the newcomer was his swordsmanship teacher. Just as he was about to bow to the other person, he suddenly heard another system prompt sound coming from his ear. Ding dong. Congratulations to the host, obtained character card. Sword Saint. Gain. Identity. Swordsmanship instructor at the Eastern Palace of the Northern Han Dynasty. Cultivation. Refers to the peak of the mysterious realm. Weapon. Wooden sword. Oh. Lu Xianxia pressed down on his excited emotions, but deliberately showed a hint of indescribable sadness on his face. He took 3 steps and 2 steps in front of Gainye. Qi Qiran bowed and said, "Sir, please accept my disciple's bow." Gainye's face was calm as water, and he let out a soft sigh. He raised his hand and supported him weakly, saying, "Your Highness, we are different from each other. How can I bear such a great gift from the Lord? It's true that it has turned evil on me." Lu Xun gave a dismal smile and sighed, "At the time of the collapse of the country and the downfall of the family, why bother to pay attention to the differences between monarchs and officials? Now all I hope to do is find a place to live, and I will sacrifice my remaining life through hard work and happiness." Gainye nodded silently, not knowing what was on his mind, his eyes suddenly dimmed. Upon seeing this, Lu Xun suddenly felt a tightness in his heart and asked with a trembling voice, "Father and Queen?" Gainye shook his head, let out a long sigh, and said, "Your Highness, please mourn." His voice was mixed with an indescribable sadness. Ah! Although Lu Xun had already guessed such a result, he still felt somewhat incredulous about the outcome when he heard the bad news. He immediately pounded his feet and chest, let out an unusually mournful roar. His face was fierce, like a fierce beast that wanted to choose someone to devour. He gritted his steel teeth and said, "Damn Zhao Li, if I still have 1 breath left, I will make you feel restless all over Zhao's house." Zhao Li was the Emperor of Liyang, who had a close relationship with General Xu Xiao. He was the decision-maker for the downfall of Northern Han, while Xu Xiao was the executor leading the army to charge on the front line. The two were birds of a feather. Gai Niat sighed and lightly patted Lu Sun's shoulder, saying, Xu Xiao has been ordered to search for your whereabouts everywhere. It is not advisable to stay here for a long time. We need to leave here as soon as possible and find a safe place to live. Upon hearing this, Lu Sun suddenly gave a cold smile and said, Zhao Li, you dog thief, since you are not kind, then don't blame me for my injustice. Don't blame me anymore. With a wave of his hand, he said, let's go, follow me to Liaodong, and dig the ancestral tomb of the Zhao family. No. Upon hearing these words, Yan Yuner and others immediately arched their hands together. Gai Nye frowned. He wanted to persuade Lu Sun not to do such outrageous things, but then he thought that someone else had already fallen into the tragic situation of family destruction and human death. His parents, brothers and sisters were all killed by Li Yang's army. How could he persuade Lu Sun with a few words? So he had no choice but to swallow back the words that were already on his lips. A group of people emerged day and night, following the mountain path all the way north to avoid the Yang Zhao Ghost Scout and the layers of inspection along the way. Fortunately, the Great War under Taiyuan had just ended, and the Liyang court had not yet had time to send officials and defenders to nearby passes. It was not until recently that Lu Sun and his team arrived at a pass that had just been replaced by the Liyang army. Finally, in an unavoidable situation, they had no choice but to launch a bloody massacre in front of the pass. Together, they killed all the Liyang soldiers stationed at the pass and continued to flee north. A few hundred miles away, Lu Sun and others were able to escape from Taiyuan city after hiding and driving for over half a month. However, when they successfully escaped from Taiyuan, Lu Sun suddenly began to worry. After all, the entire Northern Han Dynasty had already fallen into the hands of the Liyang court. If Xu Xiao sent troops to pursue them, they would definitely find it difficult to resist. While pondering, I suddenly saw a dilapidated temple not far ahead, so I said to Yan Yuner, it's getting late. Let's settle in the dilapidated temple tonight. No. Yan Yuner immediately instructed Lao Qi and Lao Ba to go to the dilapidated temple to inspect it. After a long time, Old Seven returned alone to report to Lu Sun and said, there is someone in the temple. Old Eight just stepped forward and grabbed his wrist pulse. Judging from his appearance, he probably doesn't know martial arts. Please advise your highness on how to deal with this person. Don't act rashly for now, let me go and check it out when I'm alone. After Lu Sun finished speaking, he walked slowly forward and pushed the door in. The dilapidated temple has mottled walls and some dry thatch piled up in the corners. Two people sit in front of the bonfire, and a young man in coarse linen clothes sits in front of the flickering bonfire. Although the pulse gate of his right hand is held by Lao Ba, his face always carries a calm and composed expression. Lu Sun looked carefully at the young man in front of him through the faint glow of the fire. Although the young man was not like a wealthy person, his elegant and easy-going demeanor would create an inexplicable sense of familiarity, especially his clear and bright eyes, which seemed to contain a vast blue lake that captivated people. Seeing Lu Sun enter, the young man's eyes flickered slightly, but he looked calm and composed. Upon seeing this, Lu Sun silently nodded and gave a glance to Yan Yuner and others beside him, indicating that they should temporarily leave. Yan Yuner looked at Lu Sun with a slight hesitation and reminded him softly, this person's movements are quite mysterious, and my lord cannot ignore them. Don't worry, Lao Ba has already investigated his true and false. He won't deceive our palace, will he? Besides, our palace is not easily controlled by any cat or dog. You can go outside the door and guard it first, and our palace will come to investigate his true and false. No. Yan Yuner nodded and then ordered everyone to silently retreat. Lu Sun looked at the young man with a smile, lifted his robe, and was about to sit next to him. At this moment, he suddenly heard a rapid sound of horse hooves coming from afar. Then he saw a group of black-clad men in strong clothing galloping straight towards the dilapidated temple where Lu Sun was located. Upon seeing this, Lu Xun raised his eyebrows lightly and shouted to the person in black who was ahead, "Who is the one coming?" The person didn't answer and went to the Shuyuan website www.zhaoshuyuan.com. They just stopped in front of the dilapidated temple and immediately got off their horse, walking towards Lu Xun. The person who came was Xu Xiao's close attendant, Han Laozhan. Han Laozhan actually ignored Yan Yuner and his group directly, and in front of everyone, he was about to break into the dilapidated temple. It was not until Yan Yuner, with lightning speed, put a curved sword around his neck that he finally realized and put aside his contempt for Lu Xun and his group. Immediately bowing in a loud voice, he said, "At Mount Laozhan in Han, I have been ordered by the general to come and deliver a message to your highness. As long as you take the initiative to lead your country's military and civilians to surrender to Liyang, the general can make a decision and let you go." Lu Xun raised his eyebrows and looked at Han Laozhan with an indifferent expression, saying, "I have a grudge against Su Jizi. Do you want me to surrender to him? It's just a daydream, I wouldn't hesitate to die." As he spoke, he suddenly paused and silently raised his hand, pointing to Han Laozhan with an angry expression on his face, saying, "However, I would like to borrow something from you, and I hope you don't refuse." "Oh." Upon hearing this, Han Laozhan couldn't help but furrow his brows slightly and looked at Lu Xun expressionlessly, saying, "I wonder what your highness wants to borrow." Lu Xun looked at Han Laozhan with a playful expression on his face and raised his eyebrows, saying, "Would you like to guess?" Han Laozhan's face gradually darkened and he said, "Your highness, why do you need to speak clearly? If what I expected is correct, your highness may want to borrow your head from me to demonstrate to the general." Upon hearing this, Lu Xun suddenly burst into laughter and caressed his hands. After laughing, he gave him a thumbs up and said, "Dealing with smart people can indeed save a lot of trouble." After speaking, he gave a cold smile and looked straight into Han Laozhan's eyes. He said word by word, "It's getting late, get ready to go." Chapter 3. Sword Strikes Like a Dragon. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Lu Xun exchanged a glance with Gai Nie through the faint glow of the bonfire in front of him and said, "Thank you, sir." Gai Nie nodded slightly and gestured to Han Laozhan, then suddenly drew his sword out of its sheath and stabbed it towards Han Laozhan's throat. Humph. Upon seeing the situation, Han Laozhan let out a cold snort and immediately tapped his toes to the ground, his body shooting backwards like a shell. He quickly drew out the jujube wood spear called Xiaoman's shoulder from behind, landed and stabilized his figure, and without saying a word, launched a fierce attack on Gain like a storm. Boom! Two huge airflow collided in mid-air, stirring up a sky full of dust, as terrifying as the end of the world. Han Laozhan suddenly burst out with a dazzling golden light, like a warrior in golden armor, with extraordinary power. "Drink it." He suddenly shook his arms, and in an instant, it seemed as if his figure had suddenly risen a few inches. The jujube wood spear in his hand turned into two long dragons, roaring towards the vital point of Gai Nie. This strike is as powerful as 1,000 Jun, with infinite force. Good time. Upon seeing this, Gai Nie's eyes suddenly lit up, he let out a soft drink and swung his sword to greet him. Chang two weapons collided violently in the air, and a deafening roar erupted at the scene. The young man was startled by the sudden loud noise and trembled all over. He took a deep breath to adjust his mood, but soon returned to his calm demeanor. Upon seeing this, Lu Xun couldn't help but frown and said to himself, "It's really strange that a young man who looks weak and uncontrollable has such a temperament." Thinking about it, he suddenly smiled and arched his hand at the young man, saying, "Your Excellency has an extraordinary demeanor. I don't know which sect you come from. May I ask your name and surname?" The young man smiled and dusted off the dust that had been shaken off his body. He sighed and said, "How can I bear the 4 characters of a noble name and a noble name in the lower district? White body." Lu Xun looked at the young man again under the faint light in front of the campfire, only to see him dressed in coarse linen clothes, with a wooden hairpin casually inserted on his head, and a pair of cloth shoes that had been washed white with starch on his feet. He was undoubtedly a commoner in his attire. But Lu Xun always felt that there seemed to be an astonishing energy hidden within this young man. After a moment of contemplation, he slowly said, "Your Excellency, I have an extraordinary aura, and I am not a thing in the pool." The young man smiled faintly upon hearing the words, without taking any action. Lu Xun frowned and looked up at Yan Yunar and others who were silently guarding the entrance of the temple. "Don't be idle either, take action, there's no need to leave any survivors." "No." 18 people agreed in unison, drawing swords to kill the group of Liyang masters who came with Han Lao's Han, while Yan Yunar silently retreated to Lu Xun's side, looking at the expressionless young man with a wary expression. Although the young man always had a calm expression on his face, his heart had already stirred up turbulent waves. Despite facing danger, he still couldn't conceal his priceless demeanor. The pursuers were right in front of him, but his face showed no fear, and he was accompanied by a group of martial arts experts. The youth has guessed Lu Xun's identity. The scene fell into a brief silence. About a minute has passed. The young man reached out to pick up a branch from the campfire and bent down to write and draw on the ground. "Your Highness is now a hidden dragon in the abyss." The young man deliberately slowed down his pace and spoke softly, fearing that he might scare Lu Xun and others. However, as soon as he spoke, there was a sound of drawing a knife out of its sheath behind him. Upon hearing this, Lu Xun took an unusual long sigh of relief and turned to look at Yan Yunar. He extended his right fingers and pressed the half-drawn curved knife back into its sheath, then cast a slightly calm and composed gaze at it, indicating that it should not act rashly. He looked at the young man with a smile and reached out to plead, "Sir, your eyes are as bright as a torch. Please do not hesitate to give me some advice. I am willing to listen attentively." The young man still didn't take over, still bent down and lowered his head, gesturing on the ground. After a long time, he just looked up at Lu Xun and said, "Your Highness, please take a look." Lu Xun followed his gaze and looked at the ground, only to see in an instant that the young man had already drawn a simple map on the ground. The young man nodded on the map with a tree branch and said, "Xu Xiao's main focus in using troops is the word fast. He is extremely skilled at using cavalry to break the deadlock, and then using the momentum of breaking bamboo to attack cities and seize territory." Lu Xun frowned and thought for a moment, then nodded in agreement and said, "Your words are absolutely right." The young man continued, "Taiyuan City has been destroyed for more than half a month, and with Xu Xiao's character, he will definitely not stay here." As he spoke, he cut down the branches and finally, at the bottom right corner of the character, Northern Han, he tapped heavily on the character, Great Wei, and said, "If what I expected was right, Xu Xiao's cavalry should have already headed south. Their goal for this trip is to attack Great Wei." As he spoke, he suddenly looked up at Han Lao's Han, who was engaged in a fierce battle with Xianxia, and said, "This person should be the henchman left behind by Xu Xiao in the Northern Han Dynasty. On the one hand, he can use his unfathomable martial arts to intimidate the old officials of the Northern Han Dynasty, and on the other hand, he can lead a group of Liyang experts to continue searching for His Highness's whereabouts. Just. A wise man will make a mistake if he thinks twice. Despite Xu Xiao's countless calculations, he will still be one step behind in chess." At this moment, only a crisp sound was heard, and Han Laoshan's jujube wood spear in his hand unexpectedly snapped in response. Not good. Han Laoshan's heart tightened and he quickly withdrew his moves for defense, but as soon as he withdrew his hand, he felt a powerful force surging towards him that could not resist. Xianxia waved his sword and pointed forward to the Shuyuan website www.zhaoshuyuan.com, using his deadly sword, known as the one-blade cutting throat, 100-step flying sword. A giant dragon condensed from true qi, carrying an unstoppable momentum, crashed into the chest of Han Lao's Han. Bang! Han Lao's Han was hit by a giant dragon and flew backward several zhang, breaking off more than a dozen large trees behind him before finally being able to stop his body. He opened his mouth and blood gushed out, staining his clothes. One hand is broken, but the other hand cannot support the body. It was not until then that he realized that his internal organs, limbs, and meridians had been shattered by the blow he had just received. Upon seeing this, Lu Xun finally showed a relieved smile on his face and looked at Yan Yuner, saying, "Take off the head of Han Laoshan and stack their heads in front of the temple gate to build the Jingguan." As he spoke, he leaned forward and looked contemptuously at Han Laoshan, who was lying on the ground in disarray. He said, "You don't just accompany Xu Xiao honestly, but you insist on running to see him die. You don't have any flesh all over your body, but you insist on running to become fat. You don't even pee and take care of yourself, let's see if you have that piece of material." After speaking, he waved his hand to Yan Yuner with a cold face. "No." Yan Yuner bowed and responded, then jumped up to Han Laoshan. With a tremble in her wrist, she held a curved sword like a snake spitting out a message, cutting it towards Han Laoshan's neck. Han Laoshan's face suddenly changed, and he suddenly felt a chill in his neck. He wanted to dodge on his side, but his severely injured body found it difficult to move halfway. The curved knife slashed across the neck, splashing a patch of blood, and blood spurted out, soaking Han Laoshan's robe. "Ah!" Han Laoshan let out a muffled groan and reached out to cover his bleeding neck, with a painful expression on his face. After struggling for a moment, he suddenly fell to the ground and died instantly. Chapter 4. Two-Way Journey. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ding dong. Congratulations to the host, slay a master from the Finger Mysterious Realm and obtain 15,000 points of God-killing points. Ding dong, congratulations to the host. Kill several 3rd and 4th level martial artists and obtain a total of 5,000 killing points. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for winning 2 lucky draws. Would you like to proceed with the draw? First, draw once to see your luck. Lu Xun's mind moved as he entered the system space, silently tapping the lottery button in the center of the wheel. The next moment, the system interface flickered slightly, and the wheel slowly turned. Looking at the slowly rotating wheel, Lu Xun frowned and fell into a brief moment of contemplation. He thought to himself, the top priority is to improve one's own strength. It would be great if he could draw another martial arts secret book. Perhaps upon hearing Lu Xun's call, the pointer circled around the roulette wheel for more than a dozen times before slowly stopping at the option in the cultivation column. A martial arts secret book appeared in the system interface. When Lu Xun saw the martial arts on the secret script, his joy overflowed and he almost burst out laughing. He pressed down on his excitement and said to himself, "Just in time, I'm dozing off, and the system has sent me a pillow." 6 Meridian Divine Sword. Lu Xun lightly tapped on the secret script with his mind. The next moment, but with a flicker of light, the secret script suddenly turned into fragments of fine light, all of which flooded into Lu Xun's mind. Feeling the essence flowing into his mind, Lu Xun could not help but close his eyes and carefully comprehend the sword meaning and essence of martial arts contained in it. After a long time, he had fully understood the martial arts techniques involved and couldn't help but praise in his heart, the 6 Meridian Divine Sword is truly extraordinary. Just now, Lu Xun realized that the 6 Meridian Divine Sword had taken a lot of time. He was worried that another lottery might neglect the young people around him, so he silently exited the system interface and waited for his leisure time before making the lottery. The young man looked at Lu Xun with a smile, his deep eyes seeming to penetrate everything in the world, and said, "Your Highness seems to have gained a lot from this fierce battle just now." Lu Xun was slightly taken aback, but he didn't expect the young man's eyes to be so astute. He smiled slightly and said, "A skilled player can only win or lose in an instant. It is fortunate for us ordinary people to be able to watch the battle from the sidelines. If we could gain a little insight from it, it would be immeasurable for us." As he spoke, the conversation suddenly changed and the topic shifted back to Xu Xiao. He said, "Our conversation just now was unexpectedly interrupted, and we haven't finished speaking. The road ahead is vast, and I really don't know where to go. Please give me a clear direction, sir." The young man smiled faintly and said, "Your Highness, there is no need to worry. With your current martial arts level, even if you face Han Laozhan directly, you may not fall behind." Speaking, he picked up a branch and gestured on the ground. Lu Xun only thought he had said a polite word to himself, but he didn't pay much attention. He smiled slightly and lowered his head to look in the direction of the branch. Bei Mang. Lu Xun frowned and looked up at the young man, who had roughly guessed his thoughts. The spring and autumn war is raging in the central plains, while the northern Mang side is also not idle. The Murong family's mother Yeka suddenly launched a coup, intending to take chestnuts out of the fire. The young man spoke and silently scanned Lu Xun and others. He had a rough understanding of their strength, so he suddenly leaned over and looked into Lu Xun's eyes, saying word by word, "If your Highness can help one or two of them, after the Murong family has achieved a complete victory, your Highness will definitely receive considerable rewards from them." Upon hearing this, Lu Xun frowned and fell into contemplation. He thought very seriously for a long time, but ultimately gave up the idea of getting involved. Although he had fused the memories of his master, he was still a traveler. Reason told him that he could not put the people of the Central Plains in danger for personal gain. Seeing that Lu Xun had been silent for a long time, the young man had roughly guessed his thoughts. He was very surprised by Lu Xun's decision. A crown prince who had been ruined by the Liyang court would make a decision to give up when faced with such a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. This is really unbelievable. After a long silence, Lu Xun slowly spoke up and gave the answer in his heart. "I cannot put the people of the Central Plains in danger for personal gain." Although he had already guessed the result in advance, when this sentence came out of Lu Xun's mouth, the young man still felt a deep shock. Such a broad-mindedness is rare in the world. The young man sincerely praised in his heart. Lu Xun suddenly narrowed his eyes and said coldly, "Liyang wants to unify the world, where is it so easy? Our palace can take advantage of Xu Xiao's army's attack on the Great Way and cause some trouble for them in the rear. In the days to come, we will complain and seek revenge." The young man smiled slightly and looked like he was guiding the country, saying, "Before the real turning point arrives, your Highness can recruit troops and horses in the north, gather strength, and wait for the timing." Lu Xun arched his hand solemnly towards the young man, with an attitude of humbly seeking advice, and said, "What is the real turning point? Please teach me, sir." His Highness is the Crown Prince of the Great Han Dynasty, who has a high reputation in his homeland. If the days change, His Highness only needs to shout from high. Will the soldiers and civilians of the Great Han Dynasty not eat rice wine to welcome the Han army? This is the benefit of human harmony. The Great Han Dynasty is located in the two states of Yoha. The northern region is rich in famous horses, abundant in resources, and strong in people's customs. The southern part of Yoha is an open and unobstructed area suitable for cavalry combat. When the days change, His Highness only needs to send a strong brigade to move south from Yoha, and the hegemony can be achieved by lifting the whip. This is the benefit of geographical advantage. The young man suddenly sighed and shook his head helplessly as he spoke. Upon seeing the situation, Lu Xun quickly asked in an urgent voice, "Excuse me, sir. How do you get the timing? Please teach me, sir." Liyang launched this spring and autumn war with the strength of the whole country, and successively attacked and annihilated the Great Han, Later Song, Later Sui, Eastern Yu, and Southern Tang. The troops pointed directly at Wei, and now they have the advantage. The timing is in him, not in Han. With a slight smile, the conversation suddenly changed and he said, "However, the situation is far from out of control. The timing is approaching in an instant, your Highness just needs to be patient and wait." Lu Xun slammed his forehead heavily, as if something suddenly came to his mind. He then exchanged a meaningful glance with the young man and approached the Shuyuan website www.zhaoshuyuan.com, saying, "I have fully understood where the turning point is. Sir, why don't we write it in the palm of our hand and reveal it at the same time? I don't know what your opinion is." The young man was taken aback and nodded with a smile, saying, "I also have this intention." The two of them picked up a branch from the campfire, wrote 2 words in their palms, and then leaned in to take a closer look. What Lu Xun wrote in his palm is Western Chu. And what the young man wrote in his palm was Attack Chu. Seeing that the other person actually had the same intention as themselves, both of them were taken aback and then looked at each other, clapped and laughed. The young man slowly swam down the map with a branch in his hand, and then nodded heavily at the position of Western Chu, saying, "When Liyang rises to attack Chu with all his might, His Highness only needs to lead a group of gathered old Han troops to rush south to support Western Chu. When the two countries are trapped in the quagmire of war and unable to extricate themselves." As the young man spoke, he suddenly lifted his head and looked at Lu Xun with a smile. The two of them looked at each other tacitly, and then burst into laughter and applause. After laughing, Lu Xun suddenly let out a sigh and said, "It is a great blessing in life for Sun to meet his master at the time of the collapse of his country and his family." The young man smiled slightly, bowed, saying, "Your Highness, in times of danger, can still stick to your true heart and care for the people. He is truly a wise master that is rare in 100 years. As the young man spoke, he suddenly bent down and knelt down in front of Lu Xun, saying, "I have been wandering for half my life and have chosen my master. However, I have not met his master. Now that I have been with him, I am truly comforted for my life. Although I have suffered a lot, I am still willing." Upon hearing these words, Lu Xun was immediately overjoyed. He quickly stepped forward to help the young man, took his arm, and said, "In the midst of danger, Mr. Meng refused to give up and was willing to bow down to assist. It is truly a fortunate invitation from heaven. Your Highness's praise is absurd, and I am not worthy of it." The young man smiled humbly. Chapter 5. The Great Strategist. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yan Yuner instructed everyone to report to Lu Xun after building the Jingguan outside the dilapidated temple, saying, "The Jingguan has been built. Please have your Highness inspect it." Lu Xun nodded and stood up, holding the young man's arm. The two walked out of the dilapidated temple side by side. He glanced at the dozen or so heads stacked together, nodded in satisfaction, and then said to everyone, "This place is not suitable for staying long. Let's leave here first." "No." Everyone agreed in unison. Yan Yun's 18 cavalry led the way, while Gai Nye and Yan Yuner were closely guarding Lu Xun's side. The group passed through the dense forest and headed north towards the border between the Northern Han and the two Liao dynasties. Lu Xun was particularly pleased to have successfully received the assistance of a visionary scholar. "Just now, I was so happy that I even forgot about the lottery. Suddenly, I remembered that there was another chance for the lottery to be useless." Lu Xun smiled helplessly and said to himself, "I just got the assistance of a scholar, not a big shot. I was so happy. I really shouldn't have." After thinking about it, with a thought, my mind entered the system space and silently tapped the lottery button in the center of the wheel. The system interface flickered slightly, and the wheel slowly turned. After circling the roulette wheel for more than a dozen times, the pointer slowly stopped at the option in the character column. "Congratulations to the host, have you obtained a character card? Do you want to unlock the character card?" "Unlock." "Ding dong, congratulations to the host, obtaining the character card." Wang Meng. Oh my goodness. Lu Xun suddenly took a cold breath and a hint of indescribable shock flashed in his eyes. When the word Wang Meng appeared, the surprise had already turned into shock. Lying trough. Wang Meng. Surprisingly, it was the former Qin Prime Minister Wang Meng. Wang Meng, with the courtesy name Jing Lu, comes from a poor family and is magnificent and handsome. Even after several generations, there is no official to be found. Some people say he is the first person to achieve great success in Zhuge, but of course, this is a matter of opinion. However, this person definitely has the qualifications to be compared to any outstanding prime minister in history. Wang Meng is a versatile talent with both personal achievements in leading troops and political achievements. In terms of power, strategy, and the Golden Sword strategy, which have been used as an example for the ages, Wang Meng has a clear overall understanding of the pre-Qin period in terms of strategy. When Lu Xun looked at the young man next to him again, his old face smiled like a chrysanthemum, with even a hint of flattery in his smile. Mr. Kai just now refused to share his name with me, and I deeply regret it. As Lu Xun spoke, he suddenly arched his hand at the young man with a serious expression and said, "Sun, may I ask if you have the courage, sir? May I know your name?" The young man was startled by Lu Xun's extremely serious attitude and quickly bowed back, saying, "How can a rural villager bear the revered character in your highness's mouth? I am Wang Meng, with the character Jing Lu and a person from Beihai. I am highly valued by your highness and I am filled with fear. In the future, I will work diligently to provide your highness with advice, in order to repay his highness's kindness in the face of adversity." Upon hearing these words, Lu Xun felt his confidence double. He turned his head to look at Wang Meng and said, "With your help, there is hope for the restoration of the Northern Han Dynasty." 3 days later. Dawei. Yuzhou. Shudu, the capital city. Xu Xiao personally led a large army to set up a 10-mile battalion outside the city. In the handsome tent. Xu Xiao hunched his body and rested his arms on the handsome table. In front of him was Han Laoshan's bloody head, and he stared blankly without saying a word for a long time. At the bottom sat 2 middle-aged scholars, one black and one white. The person dressed in white frowned tightly, with a sickly blush on his face, and occasionally let out a light cough in his mouth. The person dressed in black sat spicy on the back of the chair, holding a wine jug in his hand. He occasionally took a sip, drank the wine, and a satisfied expression appeared on his face. These two were the two most important strategists under Xu Xiao's command. The former was named Zhao Chongling, who was the chief strategist of Beiliang and was skilled in Yang strategy. He was known as the top strategist in the left of the Yangtze River and was undoubtedly the talented Wang Zhuo. He was also the legitimate eldest grandson of the Zhao family in the Great Chu Green Pavilion, one of the top 10 wealthy warlords of the spring and autumn period. The latter is named Li Yishan, who comes from a humble background and is known as a Yin talent by the world. He is skilled in using conspiracy and poison. In front of the handsome case stood a man with a mountain-like figure. He was Han Laoshan's junior brother, originally named Lu, and later followed the surname Xu Xiao. This person was Su Yanbing. Xu Xiao suddenly withdrew his gaze, looked up at Su Yanbing, smiled slightly, and said, "Why use a slaughtering ox knife to kill chickens? He, you go back first, I will definitely give you an explanation." Su Yanbing nodded silently and turned around to leave the handsome tent. After Su Yanbing left, Li Yishan slowly stood up and walked to the handsome table. He looked at Xu Xiao and said, "Lord, this matter is not insignificant. We must not take it lightly." Upon hearing this, Xu Xiao's eyes flashed with a hint of sarcasm and he said lightly, "What kind of opponent have we not encountered in all these years? Are you still afraid that a 15-year-old child won't succeed?" After he finished speaking, he didn't speak again, but instead focused his gaze on the head on the handsome table, frowning and lost in thought. Upon seeing this, Li Yishan frowned and said, "I've never heard anyone say that Lu Xun has such ability before, it's really strange." After a light cough, Zhao Chongling slowly spoke up and said, "Over the years, we've been going too smoothly." Upon hearing this, Xu Xiao's right eyelid involuntarily twitched. Zhao Qiangling's statement is clearly a satire on him. Your words are absolutely right, Xu Xiao said lightly. Li Yishan suddenly spoke in a deep voice, with a hint of unquestionable tone. Lord, I have a vague feeling that this person will be a big trouble in the future, and we must spare no effort to eliminate him. If he gets a chance to breathe, it will pose a huge threat to us. Xu Xiao pondered for a moment before nodding slowly. How could he not understand this? A person who never shows off his true nature suddenly burst out with great energy. You suddenly realize that your control of Lu Sun's information has suddenly deviated greatly. The most terrifying enemy is the unknown enemy like zhaoshuyuan.com. Moreover, what's even more uncomfortable is that you have no idea what he will do next. Xu Xiao was well aware that if Lu Sun was allowed to continue growing, it wouldn't be long before he would grow into an uncontrollable tiger, and at that time, it would be even harder to kill him. Zhao Qiangling suddenly changed his previous sickly expression, his eyes shining like lightning, as if he could capture the soul, and said, I predict that Lu Sun will definitely flee north. My lord needs to make people pay attention to the area from the Northern Han Dynasty to the Northern Mang, and send more personnel to guard against death. Li Yishan nodded in agreement and took over the conversation, filling in the gaps for Zhao Qiangling. He said, we need to send an additional team to search for the border area between the Northern Han Dynasty and the Tu Liao dynasties. I will then use a large sum of money to bribe the martial arts experts and surround and intercept them. Humph, then we will work together, and we apologize for Lu Sun's inability to escape. Upon hearing this, Xu Xiao couldn't help but frown and said, will he escape to the Tu Liaos? Do he dare to escape to the Tu Liaos? That's our stronghold in Liyang. Yishan, you must have looked up to him too much, right? Li Yishan narrowed his eyes slightly and said slowly, this person's actions are difficult to predict. If he dares to take risks in military operations, perhaps. Li Yishan just pointed to the point and didn't continue, but his meaning was self-evident. Xu Xiao suddenly narrowed his eyes slightly, tapping his fingers rhythmically on the handsome table. After pondering for a long time, he said to the outside of the handsome tent, Yin, pass on my message and let Yi Shizhen and Yao Jian stationed in Taiyuan City lead people to investigate Lu Sun's whereabouts. Once they find him, life and death are of no account. The Yin in Xu Xiao's mouth is the death warrior of the 12 earthly branches that he began to cultivate, and also his confidant. Yes. Yin just replied lightly, never appearing from beginning to end. Chapter 6. 6 Divine Sword exhibits divine power. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The autumn wind howled past, brushing the fallen leaves on both sides of the mountain path. Lu Sun and others are slowly moving along the mountain road. There are only 2 roads to take when entering the Tu Liao provinces from Taiyuan. If you choose to take the main road, you will inevitably face endless encirclement and interception from the soldiers from Liyang. After some discussion and deduction, Lu Sun and Wang Meng finally decided to take the small road. This move can also be considered as knowing that there are tigers on the mountain and leaning towards the Tiger Mountain. Lu Sun is gambling that Xu Xiao and the Liyang court will not be able to spare any manpower in a short period of time, so they cannot send too many people to search for him everywhere. Lu Sun's eyes kept scanning the dense forests around him, and the mountain path became narrower and narrower. The trees and rocks on both sides could provide good cover. Yan Yuner, who had extensive experience on the battlefield, silently approached Lu Sun and reminded him softly, Lord, the trees and forests around are the best place to bury ambushes. Please hurry up and pass through this place quickly. Lu Sun was also worried about this, so he nodded and immediately quickened his pace, pulling Wang Meng forward quickly. Suddenly, a soldier from Liyang exposed half of his body under the shade of a tree, arched and aimed at the team of Lu Sun and others. Li Yanchao, one of the 4-toothed generals under Xu Xiao's command, followed Yi Shizhen and Yao Jian to guard the former territory of the Northern Han Dynasty. He was also ordered by Yi Shizhen to lead 300 elite soldiers to ambush on both sides of the mountain road, silently waiting for the arrival of Lu Xun and his team. Just at this moment, a burst of bird songs suddenly sounded above the dense forest. Yan Yuner was already used to the days of licking blood with a knife. He had an extraordinary sense of danger, and when he saw this, his face suddenly changed. He quickly shouted, "Be careful." Upon hearing these words, Lu Xun and others immediately became alert. Yan Yun's 18 cavalry quickly reacted and quickly placed Lu Xun and Wang Menhu in the middle. Gai Nia held a wooden sword and observed the movements around him with a wary expression. A sharp arrow pierced through the air and shot straight at Lu Xun's chest. In the blink of an eye, it had reached less than half a meter in front of Lu Xun's chest. As the arrow was within reach, Lu Xun still had the mood to extend his right hand and give a thumbs up in the direction of the person who threw the cold arrow at him, praising, "Good arrow technique." After speaking, he suddenly changed his hand gesture and compared it to a shooting motion. His right index finger suddenly shot out a sword energy without any warning. 6 Meridian Divine Sword, Shanyang Sword. The main characteristic of Shanyang Sword is its cleverness, flexibility, and unpredictability. However, at this moment, emanating from Lu Xun's right index finger, there was a hint of unstoppable momentum. Due to the bonus of the full-level Dragon Elephant Prajnaparamita technique, the power of the 6 Meridian Divine Sword was far superior to before. Shoo! A sword aura flashed past and instantly pierced through the sharp arrow that was shooting directly, but this sword aura was not affected at all. With an unstoppable momentum, it shot straight into the bushes 3 feet away. The domineering and unparalleled sword energy instantly overturned the Liyang soldier who threw a cold arrow at Lu Xun to the ground. Before he could let out a scream, he spat out blood, his face was ferocious, and his body twisted a few times before stopping convulsions. He died on the spot. "Kill me with one blow." At this moment, everyone was stunned. Everyone never expected that Lu Xun would have the means to take people's lives from afar and kill enemies 4 zhang away in one fell swoop. Yan Yuner was so impressed by this ability that she couldn't help but gasp for breath. Good means. Since it had already been exposed, Li Yanchao had no intention of continuing to hide and instead appeared and walked out of the dense forest. Li Yanchao slowly raised his right hand, gesturing for his soldiers to bow and shoot arrows, and then looked at Lu Xun and others with a smile on his face. 300 soldiers under his command, hiding in the dense forest, appeared from behind the tree and aimed their bows and arrows at Lu Xun and others. With just one command from Li Yanchao, they could shoot all the poisoned arrows at Lu Xun and others who were surrounded in the center of the mountain path. Upon seeing this, Lu Xun calmly patted off the fallen leaves on his shoulder and turned his head to look at Gai Nia beside him. Gai Nia understood and immediately tightened his grip on the sword. "Yan Yuner, take care of Mr. Wang for me. If you hurt Mr. Wang, I'll ask you," Lu Xun said. Yan Yuner was not in a hurry to speak, but bent down to pick up the arrow that had fallen on the ground. After checking it, she handed it to Lu Xun and said, "My lord, the arrow has been poisoned." Before Yan Yuner could finish a sentence, she was interrupted by Lu Xun's words and said, "Because of this, I want you to do your best to protect Mr. Wang from harm. This is your order and there must be no mistakes." "No." Yan Yuner nodded and said, "Master, be careful." Li Yanchao couldn't help but laugh when he saw Lu Xun so arrogant and said, "What a big tone." As he spoke, he looked at Lu Xun with a playful expression on his face and said with a smile on his face, "I had intended to persuade you to be obedient and lead your neck to slaughter, so that I could also make the decision to let go of your entourage. But now it seems that you are planning to resist until the end. Talking too much is useless, I'm too lazy to argue with you. Let's see the truth in our hands." Lu Xun gave a cold smile and slowly raised his right hand. Everyone saw the situation and drew out their machetes, completely alert. Copying it, Lu Xun suddenly pointed his right hand forward and shot out another sword energy, directly attacking Li Yanchao's palace. Upon seeing this, Li Yanchao hurriedly dodged on his side and said angrily, "Humph. The crown prince of the Northern Han Dynasty would have done such a wicked act of sudden cold arrows." At the same time, Lu Xun's hands were like machine guns, frantically thrusting forward, and he successively used his right thumb. The Xiaoshang sword. Right middle finger. Zhongchong sword. Right ring finger. Guanchongjian. Right little thumb. Xiaochong sword, left little finger. Xiaozi sword. In just one breath, more than 20 sword energies had already been shot out. In the dense forest, an extremely mournful scream suddenly sounded, and 23 soldiers from Liyang were hit by sword energy, and died on the spot. It turned out that Lu Xuangang had just fired a sword aura at Li Yanchao, and then he had shot all the sword aura of more than 26 meridian divine swords at the Liyang soldiers ambushed on both sides of the mountain road. Lu Xun took advantage of the enemy's unpreparedness and suddenly took action, but he caught Li Yanchao and others off guard. Upon seeing this, Xia and others immediately rushed towards both sides of the mountain path and launched a wave of preemptive attacks on the already stunned soldiers of Liyang. Several arrows occasionally fly out of the dense forest, but it is difficult to pose a fatal threat to Lu Xun and others. As Xia and the 18 cavalries of Yan Yun rushed into the dense forest, deafening cries of killing echoed on both sides of the mountain path, accompanied by arrows soaring into the sky. Upon seeing this, Lu Xun quickly reminded everyone at the Shuyuan website www.zhaoshuyuan.com, saying, "Fight quickly and make quick decisions. Don't be too eager to fight." "No." Everyone responded in unison. The autumn wind blew the iron armor of the soldiers from Liyang, making the armor pieces crackle. Lu Xun's eyes flickered with a cold light, his hands constantly pointing forward. Every time he made a move, a soldier from Liyang would scream and fall into a pool of blood. The 18 cavalries of Yan Yun were extremely ruthless, like emotionless killing machines. Except for Yan Yuner who was left to protect Wang Meng, the other 17 easily tore through the enemy's formation with just the first charge. The 18 cavalries of Yan Yun took the opportunity to shuttle back and forth in the dense forest, constantly waving their curved swords and daggers. When they saw the soldier from Liyang in the distance, they took off their carved bow and carried out long-range shooting. Every bow and arrow would take the life of a soldier from Liyang, which is truly terrifying. Swords and swords intersect, armor collides, and blood splatters. Upon careful calculation, the killing skills and quantity of Yan Yun's 18 cavalry far exceeded those of Xia, who was at the peak of the Zhixian. The ferocity of the 18 cavalries of Yan Yun made the enemy's army feel anxious and their morale plummeted. For a moment, it gave Lu Xun a great opportunity to quickly harvest the enemy's life. I don't know if it was an illusion, but Lu Xun felt in a daze that his strength had significantly improved again. This was not due to an improvement in his realm, but rather a transformation like a butterfly breaking out of a cocoon. He gradually transformed from a person who dared not even kill a chicken to a killing machine that could easily turn his hand and take people's lives. This transformation made him feel an uncontrollable pleasure, and when he made a move, his hand movements became increasingly fierce. In the blink of an eye, the mountain path was covered with corpses of soldiers from Liyang. Chapter 7. Die Like a Man. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Faced with the joint attack of Lu Xun, Xia, and the skilled Yan Yun 18 cavalry, the 300 soldiers from Liyang had no strength to fight back, and the scene turned into a one-sided massacre. And this unilateral massacre only lasted for less than a stick of incense. The bodies of 300 soldiers from Liyang were all thrown into the center of the mountain path by Yan Yun's 18 cavalry. They did this purely to make it more convenient for them to retrieve the opponent's head later. In the dense forest, it was inevitable that they could not move their hands and feet freely. Lu Xuanchang breathed a sigh of relief and stood out in front of the crowd, looking at Li Yanchao with a pale face. After thinking for a moment, he suddenly patted his thigh and reached out to nod Li Yanqiao, saying, "How did that sentence come from? Oh, by the way, feng shui takes turns, and one mountain is higher than another. Hee, didn't you look quite impressive just now? Why aren't you talking now?" Seeing Li Yanqiao's eyebrows furrowed and his old face flushed, it was obvious that he was pondering a good plan. Lu Xun grinned and continued to verbally attack Li Yanqiao. "How's it going? My performance just now shouldn't have disappointed you, right?" Upon hearing this, Li Yanqiao suddenly felt a surge of anger in his heart. An unnamed flame rushed straight to his forehead. He clenched his fists tightly, his eyes turned red, and he was about to erupt. He took a deep breath, forcefully suppressing his angry emotions, and looked coldly at Lu Xun. He gritted his teeth and said, "I never expected that Your Excellency Yuan is still a top-notch Diamond Realm Master, hiding really deep." Just at this moment, a familiar system prompt suddenly sounded in Lu Xun's ear. Ding dong. It turns out that the system has just completed the settlement. Congratulations to the host. Kill 3rd, 4th, and 5th level martial artists, as well as several soldiers, and obtain a total of 7,000 killing points. Lu Xun suddenly smiled strangely and looked at Li Yanqiao, saying, "If I'm not mistaken, you should be a 2nd-grade junior master, right?" Upon hearing this, Li Yanqiao frowned inexplicably and looked at Lu Xun coldly. Although he did not speak back, his silence had already explained everything. Lu Xun gave a playful smile and gave a glance to Yan Yuner, who was standing not far away. Yan Yuner immediately understood, took off her body, carved a bow, and took out an arrow from the arrow pot. She then arched and aimed it at Li Yanqiao's chest, suddenly shooting an arrow. Whoosh! Arrows pierced through the air and arrived. Li Yanqiao's reaction was extremely fast, and he quickly turned to avoid the rushing arrow, but the speed of the arrow's flight greatly exceeded his expectations. With a purr, the arrow pierced flesh and blood, and a blood hole appeared on his right shoulder. Hush! Li Yanqiao took a cold breath and sweat beads as big as beans appeared on his forehead, with blood dripping down his sleeves. The excruciating pain emanating from the wound, he gritted his teeth and was able to endure it for a while, but the mental shock it brought was so shocking that he couldn't help but widen his eyes. He could never have imagined that a mere inner guard would be a master of the half-step finger mysterious realm. Li Yanqiao's eyelids kept twitching and his heart was restless. Suddenly, he didn't want to die. He wanted to live and meet General Xu Xiao, and report the astonishing information he had just discovered to him. But how could Lu Xun easily let him go? In the blink of an eye, Yan Yuner had once again arched and shot a second arrow at Li Yanqiao. There seemed to be a cat-and-mouse game going on at the scene. Although Yan Yuner could come forward with a knife to give Li Yanqiao a good time, he happened to stand 50 steps away from Li Yanqiao, tormenting him with a slow and steady bow and arrow. Whoosh! The second arrow pierced through the air and arrived. This time, Li Yanqiao did not dodge again. His shoulder injury severely slowed down his mobility, so he decided not to dodge, but instead vigorously waved his long sword and swung it towards the rushing arrow. Resounding. The long sword collided with the arrow, causing sparks to splash and emitting a crisp metallic collision sound. Li Yanqiao suddenly let out a painful groan, feeling a pain in his mouth and numbness in his arms, almost unable to grasp the long knife in his hand. He vigorously swung his numb arm, lowered his head and glanced at the blade, only to see a considerable gap already appearing on the blade. "Our palace has always cherished talents and wants to give you a chance to live." Lu Xun stood not far away, looking down at the disheveled Li Yanqiao from a high position. He spoke calmly, "If you are willing to abandon the dark and turn to the light, this palace can spare your life." "No way." Li Yanqiao gasped for breath and shouted sternly, "I would rather die in the border than betray the court and the general." "Okay. Since that's the case, then this palace can only fulfill your unwavering loyalty." After speaking, Lu Xun suddenly raised his palm. Li Yanchao's pupils contracted slightly, and his heart and mind trembled. This time, he didn't make any unnecessary resistance anymore, it would only make him appear like a clown being fooled at will. It's just a death, why are soldiers afraid of being wrapped in a horse's clothing? Even if it's death, one must die in their own way. Bang! Li Yanchao let go of his hand and landed his long sword, looking expressionlessly at the rushing arrows with a cold smile. Puzzle. A sharp arrow pierced through his skin and shot out through his back, causing Li Yanchao's body to crash to the ground and die instantly. Lu Xun nodded in satisfaction and looked at the body of Li Yanchao lying on the ground, with a cold gleam in his eyes. He murmured to himself, actually, the lottery can also be postponed. I wanted to save your life, but you must find your own way. Wang Meng silently came to Lu Xun's side and looked at Li Yanchao, who had already died. He said, this person dares to face life and death calmly, but he can still be considered a hero. Lu Xun nodded in agreement and approached Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com, saying, let's leave him a whole body. No. Yan Yuna nodded. Ding dong. Congratulations to the host, slay a second-level martial artist and obtain 3,000 points of killing god. The host currently has 10,000 killing points and has the opportunity to participate in a random lottery. Is it a lottery? Lottery. Lu Xun breathed a sigh of relief and entered the system space, silently tapping the lottery button in the center of the roulette wheel. The system interface flickered slightly, and the wheel slowly turned. After circling the roulette wheel for more than a dozen times, the pointer slowly stopped at the option in the Divine Weapon column. Upon seeing this, Lu Xun couldn't help but feel a bit disappointed. He had a special fondness for unlocking character cards and obtaining martial arts secrets. Now that he has drawn divine weapons, he actually feels that it is not meaningful. Yan Yuna bent down to explore Li Yanchao's body, and suddenly found a quaint style sword from behind him. Coincidentally at this moment. Ding! A line of subtitles suddenly popped up on the system interface. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the divine weapon Yuan Hong. It is said that the predecessor of this sword was the dragon-slaying sword. Kan Hong, which was crafted by the mother of the Mahist swordsmith Su Fuzi using extraterrestrial meteorites. Later, it was recast by the best swordsmith of the Qin state by fusing hardware. Lu Xun glanced at the wooden sword in Gai Nie's hand and inwardly complained, saying, I turned out to be just a passing god of wealth, but I didn't show any displeasure on my face. I forced out a smile and said, Sir, you are a famous swordsman in the world, but you have an unnamed sword in your hand. It's really not right. Now that my disciple has obtained the famous sword Yuan Hong, I can offer it to you as a gift. Please don't refuse. Chapter 8. Breaking Through the Celestial Realm. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Lu Xun reached out and waved, holding the extremely sharp Yuan Hong in his hand. He lightly flicked the sword twice, then held Yuan Hong in both hands and handed it to Gai Nie. Gai Nie looked at Lu Xun with a hint of surprise in his eyes, and quickly declined, saying, This sword is too valuable. I have no merits, how dare I accept this great gift? Lu Xun shook his head and smiled, saying, Sir, you are a top-notch expert in the world. This precious sword can only be used by you to unleash its maximum power. I have been learning swords with you for several years, and I don't know how to repay your kindness in preaching and teaching. Now that I have finally achieved my wish, please don't refuse. After hearing this, Gai Nie was deeply moved and finally stopped insisting. He took over Yuan Hong and bowed, saying, Since that's the case, then I will be disrespectful. Gai Nie held Yuan Hong in his hand and gently brushed the sword body, as if caressing the person at the tip of his heart. However, he suddenly placed Yuan Hong on his chest, tightly gripping the scabbard with his left hand, and lightly tapping the blade with his right hand. He then closed his eyes slightly and took his luck slowly. A powerful and domineering aura burst out of Gain's body, instantly filling the dense forest. At the same time, the air around him seemed to have suddenly frozen for a moment, with fallen leaves resting in the air. Suddenly, the surroundings became silent, and Wang Meng's breath was frozen into mid-air, lingering for a long time. Even Lu Xun, who was standing next to Gain, clearly felt a slight stiffness in his body, as if even breathing had become difficult. Is this the powerful aura generated by the half-step celestial realm master? Lu Xun looked at this scene with a joyful expression on his face, muttering to himself, "Sir, you have resonated with Yuan Hong. Is this about to break through?" Yan Yuner and others looked at Gain with a shocked expression on their faces, with a hint of indescribable awe in their eyes. After a moment, a strong layer of blue light suddenly appeared all over Gain's body, and the surface of his skin seemed to be bathed in a ray of holy light. This Yuan Hong handle truly lives up to its reputation. Gain slowly opened his eyes and looked at Yuan Hong in front of him, feeling the powerful force constantly emerging from his body, with a hint of smile on his lips. Gain originally thought that in order to break through again, he would need a long way to go, but to his surprise, this Yuan Hong handle allowed him to cross the bottleneck ahead of time. Tianxiang Realm. This is the realm that many martial artists dream of. The celestial realm can be said to have broken away from the mundane world and embarked on the path of cultivating immortals with one foot. This realm can be called the true supreme strength of the world, and even can compete with the first-class sex of the world with one's own strength. Lu Xun silently calculated in his heart. With my master's current martial arts level, even if that toothless old Huang has arrived, I don't think he is a match for my master. Thinking about it, he suddenly narrowed his eyes and thought to himself, however. To forge iron, you still need to be hard on your own, and I must also work hard to improve my own strength. Seeing Lu Xun suddenly frown and fall into contemplation, Wang Meng couldn't help but chuckle and say, "What is your highness thinking?" Lu Xun was taken aback and quickly restrained his mind. He looked at Wang Meng and said, "I was just thinking about what to do to turn passive into active." Wang Meng smiled slightly and sent a friendly reminder to Lu Xun, saying, "It's not advisable to stay here for a long time. Let's talk while walking." What the gentleman said is absolutely right. Lu Xun nodded in agreement and quickly pulled Wang Meng down the mountain. Gain, Yan Yuner, and others quickly followed behind them and walked towards the foot of the mountain. The group walked and stopped along the mountain path until late at night when it was quiet, and finally found a very secluded cave to settle in. In the cave, Lu Xun and Wang Meng sat opposite each other in front of the fire. Gain sat silently behind the two, holding Yuan Hong in his arms and closing his eyes to rest. The 18 cavalries of Yan Yun are responsible for night duty at the entrance of the cave. Lu Xun and Wang Meng exchanged a glance, and he saw a hint of indescribable solemnity in Wang Meng's eyes. Wang Meng suddenly took a long breath and rhythmically tapped his fingers on his thighs. He then looked up at Lu Xun and said, "Your Highness just said, but you want to turn passive into active." "Yes," Lu Xun nodded. Upon hearing this, Wang Meng's expression gradually became serious. After pondering for a long time, he said, "Your Highness, do you have a good plan?" Lu Xun thought for a moment, shook his head, and said, "If we only talk about strategy, naturally there is no such thing." He didn't have any good ideas. He just saw that Gain suddenly broke through the celestial realm, which gave him a sense of urgency. He wanted to take the initiative to obtain the killing god point and then conduct a system lottery. Although Lu Xun's answer gave people a somewhat unreliable feeling, Wang Meng still thought seriously and said, "Perhaps we can take advantage of the southward attack on Wei from Liyang and create some trouble for them in the rear, making it difficult for them to focus on both ends." Upon hearing this, Lu Xun's eyes lit up and he patted his thighs heavily, saying, "This will definitely make him pay attention to one thing and lose the other." After speaking, he looked at Gain behind him and asked, "What do you think, sir?" Gain nodded slightly and said calmly, I think this method is feasible. Lu Xun clapped his hands and laughed. Okay, as Jing Lu said, this time we will definitely stir up the rear of Liyang and make the chickens and dogs restless. There was nothing to say overnight. The next morning, Lu Xun, who was immersed in his sleep, was shaken awake by Yan Yuner. Lu Xun yawned and opened his sleepy eyes. He looked at Yan Yuner from the Shuyuan website www.zhaoxuyuan.com and said, "What happened?" Yan Yuner helped Lu Xun sit up and whispered, "There's an unexpected guest from outside the cave." Upon hearing this, Lu Xun frowned and looked at Yan Yuner with a puzzled expression, asking, "Are you friends or enemies?" Yan Yuner shook her head and said, "She just stood there silently, didn't say anything, and didn't have any intention of leaving. So, I humbly asked the second and third to control her. Whether to kill or release her still needs to be decided by the court. Yan Yun's 18 cavalries have always been very clean and efficient in their work, why did they suddenly become motherly?" Lu Xun was completely confused by him, so he decided to go out and see the situation in person, and then make a decision without delay. After leaving the cave, Lu Xun immediately saw the young woman who was sandwiched between the second and third child. She had a delicate and adorable doll face. How did she find this place? Lu Xun suddenly squinted his eyes and carefully examined the young woman. Her figure and appearance were at best the posture of a middle-aged person, so Lu Xun did not deliberately pay attention to her appearance. However, the huge cloth bag behind her caught Lu Xun's great interest. The huge cloth bag behind the woman is almost equivalent to her height. At this moment, Yan Yuner suddenly approached Lu Xun and whispered, "Your Highness, look into her eyes." Upon hearing this, Lu Xun immediately looked in the direction of Yan Yuner's fingers, but was startled at first glance. Lu Xianxia pressed down on his shock and quickly raised his hand to wave back the second and third, saying, "The visitor is a guest. How could you be so rude to a weak woman like this? Hurry up and leave." Chapter 9. Female Demon Head. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The young woman's eyes were empty and lifeless, and she was actually blind. Carrying a huge cloth bag behind him. An uninvited blind woman. Caught in the middle by the second and third, but with no change in expression. Based on the above 3 points, with just a little analysis, the identity of this person is already revealed. Seeing that the second and third of them had already retreated behind him, Lu Xun slowly spoke up and said, "If what this palace expected is good, you should be Xue Songguan, a female demon leader who is known as one of the top 10 assassins of the Northern Mang and is good at using the finger Xian to kill King Kong, right?" Upon hearing these words, Yan Yuner and others were so shocked that they couldn't help but take a cold breath. Although they had already roughly judged in advance that the person was not a good person, they never expected that the person who came was the famous Xue Song official. Although they managed to control Xue Songguan in advance without any resistance, they ultimately underestimated each other. Faced with 2 warriors from the Diamond Realm, Xue Songguan could effortlessly break free from their hands. The reason why she was not in a hurry to take action was actually because she had the same problem as the 18 cavalries of Yan Yun. It's too big. Prior to this, Lu Xuankang had the title of Prince of the Northern Han Dynasty, but he was actually a young man who could not become a scholar or a warrior. No one would take him seriously, and Xue Songguan naturally couldn't avoid vulgarity. Lu Xun frowned and looked at Xue Songguan, saying, "I'm curious. How much does the other party offer to buy my life?" Xue Songguan slowly eased the cloth bag behind his lower body, placed the Jiawei Qin horizontally on his chest, and said, 100 pounds of gold. Draft it. Su Fengnian's goods are all worth 500 pounds of gold, but is Laozi only worth 100 pounds of gold? Based on this, you have to die for me. Lu Xun was very angry, and the consequences were very serious. In a fit of rage, he took a step forward without hesitation, raised his hand and pointed directly at Xue Songguan, saying, "Fool, what do you need money for as a master of the Xianjing realm? Is it for treating your eyes? After speaking, he suddenly extended his right hand and pointed towards the opponent, shooting an invisible sword energy. Right middle finger. Zhongqiong sword, characterized by a large opening and closing, with a majestic aura. Xue Songguan smiled slightly and calmly placed his hand on the strings, gently flicking them forward. A thin, silver-like sword energy shot out, colliding with the sword energy shot out from Lu Sun. Ding! A crisp sound spread throughout the entire valley. Lu Sun's face suddenly changed, he immediately withdrew his fingers and took 3 steps back in succession to avoid his sharpness. He had almost exerted all his strength with that move just now, but he couldn't get any advantage. After a probing move, Xue Songguan suddenly smiled and leaned forward, using his hands to pluck the strings of the qin. The sound of the qin resounded, causing the birds in the valley to flee and the beasts to run wild. Upon seeing this, Yan Yunar and others were all shocked and changed their colors. They all drew out their machetes, ready to join the battle circle. Upon seeing this, Lu Sun quickly spoke up and stopped, saying, "You just need to sweep the formation for our palace from the side, no need to take action, quickly retreat." Upon hearing these words, everyone could only watch out and surround Lu Sun and Xue Songguan in the center of the battle circle. I saw her lips wriggling, her mouth muttering words, and her hands rapidly playing the strings, the speed getting faster and faster. With her movements, the surrounding air seemed to undergo some strange fluctuations, and hundreds of sword energies shot out, surging towards Lu Sun. This is the meaning of the qin. Gai Nye, who was watching the battle from a distance, was shocked to the extreme. After seeing the scene clearly, he took a deep breath again, his eyes instantly heavy like ice, and his true energy surged wildly. A majestic and extreme sword intent sprayed out of his body, like waves surging in the sky. "Sir, please wait a moment. Let me play a few moves with her first." After speaking, immediately activate the Dragon Elephant Prajnaparamita technique to protect the heart meridian. Then, extend your hands and frantically move forward. Sword energies burst out from your fingertips, like machine guns, continuously shooting towards hundreds of incoming sword energies. As the 2 sword energies collided with each other, a thunderous roar erupted in the valley. The sword energies collided in the air, causing a deafening roar and unleashing a strong gust of wind that swept around. The place where Xue Songguan stood was filled with dust and debris, like a huge whirlwind suddenly blowing in the desert. On the other hand, Lu Sun suddenly disappeared. Xue Songguan was secretly vigilant in his heart, his eyes shining brightly and his whole mind on guard. Shoo! Shoo! Suddenly, 2 piercing sounds came from behind Xue Songguan. Xue Songguan didn't look back, his wrist trembled again, and several small sword energies shot out. Ding ding ding! The crisp and pleasant sound of the clash echoed one after another, and the 2 sword energies were immediately eliminated invisibly. Hee hee! Lu Sun's cold and piercing laughter came from behind, which was chilling. Xue Songguan's face suddenly darkened and he took a step forward. Boom! At this moment, a terrifying aura suddenly enveloped Xue Songguan. Her footsteps came to a standstill. At some point, Lu Sun had already approached her side. Punch it out with 1 punch, straight to the palace. The fist wind had not yet arrived, but the terrifying fist pressure had already struck first, compressing the air and making the hunting sound. Another explosion came, and the powerful and heavy punch that Lu Sun swung across the air was easily resolved by Xue Songguan once again. Lu Sun's eyebrows furrowed slightly, and his figure was erratic, appearing on the left, right, attacking the left, and right, like a ghost, elusive and difficult to capture. Bang bang! Accompanied by the sound of breaking through the air, Lu Sun's attack was as fierce as a tide, with a continuous stream of sword energy shooting towards Xue Songguan. Unfortunately, the opponent's strength was too strong, and even though Lu Sun had tried his best, he still couldn't hurt the opponent in any way. In the end, more than 30 moves passed, and Lu Xun's attack gradually weakened. Xue Songguan seized the opportunity. With a heavy clap of both hands on the Jiawei Qin, the sound was rapid, and in an instant, dense silver-white sword energy rained down like raindrops. Swordsmanship passes by, all plants and plants wither, birds disappear, and all tangible matter turns into powder. Lu Xun was taken aback and quickly retreated, with his hands frantically pointing forward. In an instant, he shot out dozens of sword energies. Xue Songguan smiled calmly and went to Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com to play the qin again. A more intense sword energy shot out, enveloping Lu Xun's entire body. At this moment, Lu Xun's heroic and intimidating face had completely twisted, appearing extremely ferocious and terrifying. He gritted his teeth, carefully dealing with the sword energy shooting from all directions, but also appeared somewhat stretched. After more than 10 tough moves, Lu Xun was already a bit tired of dealing with them. He has made the greatest effort, although the Dragon Elephant Prajnaparamita Gong and the 6 Meridian Divine Sword are strong, they are difficult to break through the defense of Xue Songguan. At this moment, Xue Songguan suddenly tugged at the strings of the qin with force, then followed suit and sent a powerful and unparalleled sword energy straight towards Lu Xun. Upon seeing this, Lu Xun quickly raised his hand and pointed forward, shooting out 6 or 7 sword energies in succession. As the two swords collided, a violent roar erupted. Lu Xun was affected by the aftermath of the explosion, and with this force, his body suddenly retreated 3 or 4 zhang back before being supported by a large hand that suddenly appeared behind him. Lu Xun turned around and saw that the person holding him from behind was his swordsmanship teacher, so he dodged to the side and let out Xu Xiao. Xue Songguan raised his eyebrows and followed the sound. Although his eyes were blind and he couldn't see the other person's appearance clearly, he could still clearly feel the powerful aura emanating from the other person. I saw a tall and straight man walking slowly from the entrance of the mountain, like a sword. With each step taken, the fierce aura emanating from him became even stronger, as if he was about to freeze the air, full of majesty and making one's heart palpitate. Dang! 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 In an instant, he waved his long sword to block Lu Xun's sword energy, then reached out to grab Lu Xun and threw him out of the battle circle. Upon seeing the situation, Yan Yuner and others quickly stepped forward and protected Lu Xun behind them. Chapter 10. No More Hu Jia in the World 18 Beats. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Your Highness, heal your wounds first, and I will come to meet her. As he spoke, Xu suddenly stomped his foot on the ground and shot himself out in an instant, like an eagle preying on prey. He pointed his sword forward and shot towards Xue Song with a thunderous force. Xue Songguan's mouth curved slightly, his right hand vigorously plucked the strings, and his wrist flipped over. With no wind, his long sleeve automatically spewed out a majestic and powerful internal force, transforming into 2 2-foot-long sword energies, shooting towards the oncoming Xu. Dang, bang, Xue Song's official lines remained motionless, but her 2 sleeves were torn apart by the sword energy of Xu, revealing her slender arms as white as jade lotus roots, as well as her 2 shiny white and greasy white wrists. And Xu's body shook, his face changed suddenly, his throat turned sweet, and he almost vomited blood. What a powerful woman! However, even though he suffered minor internal injuries, he was unable to stop Gain's lightning-fast attack. Zheng! A crisp and piercing sound of gold rang out, and the 2 sword energies wielded by Yuan Hong and Xue Songguan in Xu's hand collided fiercely. The tremendous force shook, and Xue Songguan felt a tingling sensation in his tiger mouth. The strings in his hand were unexpectedly broken and fell to the ground. Dang! 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 At this moment, 3 sword energies attacked and killed from different directions. One aimed directly at the heart of Xu, one aimed at his left arm, and the other aimed directly at Xu's throat. Dang! Gai Nie's eyelids twitched wildly and he quickly swung his sword to block the two sword energy grids that pierced his heart and throat. However, another sword energy that came from the oblique side immediately made him unable to avoid it and could only resist forcefully. Hiss, the sound of the sword cutting through his skin came, and Gai Nie's left arm was immediately stabbed with blood. He quickly retreated several meters back before stopping his figure. Xue Songguan gave a faint smile and nodded in satisfaction, saying, "Not bad, it's even stronger than I imagined." Gai Nie's face was gloomy as he looked at Xue Songguan and said, "I didn't want to kill a woman, but why did you seek your own death?" Speaking, he gently wiped the deep red sword in his hand over the wound on his left arm. The sword body was stained with blood, and Gai Nie's expression was serious. Finally, he was about to take the opponent seriously. Although Xue Songguan had a slight advantage over the previous few moves, she could also see that Gai Nie had not yet exerted all his strength. So she no longer hesitated and decided to take quick action to avoid any unforeseen circumstances. Clanging, the sound of the qin suddenly rose, and a strong and destructive aura filled the air. The birds in the surrounding woods panicked and flapped their wings to escape. Xue Songguan held the strings with both hands, exerting all his strength, and his 10 fingers danced in the air. The sound of the qin became even more passionate, like a tsunami surging forward. Roaming and rumbling suddenly, the surrounding mountains trembled, and small hills burst one after another. Stones rolled down, dust flew in the air, and towering ancient trees tilted down, blocking the sky and sun, as if the end of the world had come. In an instant, Gain was trapped inside, unable to move a single step. His eyebrows furrowed and his mood was solemn. He never expected that Xue Songguan would have such a divine and unpredictable skill. The sound of the qin became increasingly sharp, waves rising higher and higher, as if thousands of soldiers and horses were rushing past, leaving behind a pile of bones and corpses. Gai Nie was secretly surprised that Xue Songguan had already vaguely touched the threshold of the celestial realm. Zheng! 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 The sound of the qin became increasingly passionate, like a flood overflowing, wave after wave, overwhelming the sky and earth, as if the sky had collapsed and the earth had collapsed, unable to resist. This is actually Xue Songguan's ultimate move, Hu Jia's 18 beats. Poo-poo, after all, Gai Nie couldn't withstand the sound of the qin. He opened his mouth and spewed out a large mouthful of blood, his face pale like paper. His body was boiling with qi and blood, and his internal organs were tingling with pain, as if he was enduring countless cuts and cuts. At this critical moment, I saw that Gai Nie suddenly exhaled a mouthful of turbid air and threw Yuan Hong in his hand directly toward Xue Songguan. Yuan Hong instantly transformed into a white giant dragon, carrying an boundless and sharp aura, galloping toward Xue Songguan. The sword energy surged and stirred up a visible strong wind. A hint of surprise suddenly appeared on Xue Songguan's pretty face, and he murmured, "This. Is this the legendary one-blade broken throat, 100 steps flying sword?" At this moment, Gai Nie had also followed Yuan Hong to the front of her. The sword light in his hand was swallowing and thrusting straight through her left chest, and blood immediately flowed out along the wound, staining her clothes crimson. Xue Songguan suddenly let out a muffled groan, her delicate body trembling violently, and her face twisted due to intense pain. However, she did not retreat, but instead pulled hard and forcefully pulled out Yuan Hong, who had been inserted into her left chest. Hiss, as blood splattered out, Xue Songguan's body involuntarily shook a few times and almost fell to the ground. Xue Songguan threw the blood-stained Yuan Hong in his hand aside, covered his bleeding wound, and slowly retreated to a tree. He leaned against the trunk of the tree and said with a lingering aura, "This murky and unbearable world, out of sight and out of mind, is finally liberated." After speaking, his head tilted and he died instantly. Gai Nie bent down to pick up Yuan Hong and looked at Yan Yuner, saying, "She was originally a person with disabilities, so don't go and harm her body again. Leave her a whole body." Upon hearing this, Yan Yuner silently looked at Lu Xun and saw that he nodded slightly. She nodded along and said, "It's only natural." At the same time, a very familiar voice also echoed in Lu Xun's mind. Ding dong. Congratulations to the host. Kill a martial artist who points to the Xianjing realm and obtain 15,000 killing points from the Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com. The host currently has 15,000 killing points and has the opportunity to participate in a random lottery. Is it a lottery? Lottery. Lu Xun's mind moved as he entered the system space, silently tapping the lottery button in the middle of the wheel. The system interface flickered slightly, and the wheel slowly turned. After circling around the roulette wheel for more than 10 times, the pointer slowly stopped at the option in the technique column. A martial arts secret book appeared in the system interface. Seeing the name on the secret script, Lu Xun couldn't help but feel disappointed because this martial arts skill was not as powerful as he had imagined. 7 damage fist. When this boxing technique is used, it has a grand momentum, with 7 different types of strength in each punch, either strong and fierce, or yin and soft, or hard and soft, or hard and soft, or horizontal, or straight, or inward. If the enemy cannot resist this source of strength, they will be deeply injured internally. There are 5 elements in the body. Yin and yang. Lung belongs to metal, liver belongs to wood, kidney belongs to water, heart belongs to fire, and spleen belongs to earth. The so-called 7 injuries refer to these 7 types of injuries. But if this 7 injury fist is learned by someone who has not yet reached the state of internal power, it will cause great harm to oneself, both to others and to oneself. With each level of increase in fist power, one's own damage will increase. However, those who have achieved great internal power will not only be harmless but also beneficial to learn it. Sigh. Fly legs are also meat. Lu Xun let out a light sigh and lightly tapped on the secret script through his thoughts. The next moment. But with a flicker of light, the secret script suddenly turned into fragments of light, all of which flooded into Lu Xun's mind. In just an instant, Lu Xun perfectly integrated the key techniques of Qi Shang Quan's energy and inner power into his body.